The Meridian's Hope was a good ship. Not the fastest, but solid and reliable. Captain had served on worse vessels during her 20 years in the United Earth Space Corps. She stood on the bridge, watching the stars drift past on the main screen, and felt the quiet pride that came with commanding her own ship. They were 17 days into their journey to the colonies. It was supposed to be a simple trip: deliver supplies, pick up colonists who wanted to return to Earth, and head home. Nothing exciting, nothing dangerous, just another milk run through the stars. "Captain," said Lieutenant Park, her navigation officer. He was young, barely 25, with the kind of eager energy that reminded of herself many years ago. "I found something interesting." Walked over to his station. "Show me." Park pulled up a star chart on his screen. A red line showed their current route, stretching across the galaxy in a long curve. But he had drawn a second line in blue. This one cut straight through a dark region of space that their charts simply labeled unmapped. "If we go through here," Park said, "we save 3 months of travel time, maybe more." Studied the chart. 3 months was significant. The colonists waiting on 442b had been away from Earth for years. 3 months sooner meant 3 months less of waiting for families to reunite. It meant 3 months less of fuel costs, less wear on the ship, less time away from her own daughter back on Earth. "Why isn't this route on the standard charts?" she asked. Park shrugged. "No idea. The region is marked as unmapped, but our long-range sensors show clear space. No asteroid fields, no nebulae, nothing dangerous. It's actually emptier than normal space." Frowned. Something about this felt wrong. Empty space was never truly empty, and unmapped regions usually had a reason for being unmapped. But she also knew that humanity was new to galactic travel. The alien races they had met all had thousands of years of history in space. Humans had only been flying between stars for about 50 years. Their charts were full of gaps simply because no human ship had gone to those places yet. "What do the Concord databases say?" she asked. The Galactic Concord was the alliance of alien species that had welcomed humanity into the larger galactic community 8 years ago. When Earth joined, they had received access to the Concord's vast databases of knowledge. Star charts, history, science, culture. More information than humanity could process in 100 lifetimes. Park typed at his console for a moment, then shook his head. "Still processing. The Concord database is huge, Captain. Our systems are still sorting through it. The section on this region hasn't been indexed yet." Made her decision. 3 months was 3 months. The sensors showed clear space, and humanity hadn't gotten to the stars by being afraid of the unknown. "Plot the new course," she said. "Let's save ourselves some time." The Meridian's Hope changed direction and headed into the dark. Far across the galaxy, in a great hall made of crystal and light, Ambassador was attending a routine meeting of the Concord's Trade Council. Was a Dominion, a species that looked something like a tall spider made of blue glass. They had 7 hearts, 12 eyes, and a reputation for being calm under pressure. Nothing surprised a Dominion. Nothing scared a Dominion. When the alert came through, felt 2 of its 7 hearts stop for a moment. The message was simple. A human ship had entered the Forbidden Zone. A human ship had entered war space. A human ship was now traveling through the tomb of the architects. Excused itself from the trade meeting and ran. Dominions did not run. They walked with slow dignity, their long legs carrying them with grace and poise, but ran because every moment mattered now. The emergency council was already gathering when arrived. Representatives from all 7 founding species sat in a circle of floating chairs, their faces grim. On a screen in the center of the room, a small blue dot moved slowly through a region of space marked in red. "How did this happen?" demanded High Admiral of the Hegemony. There were warriors, tall and strong, with scales like armor and voices like thunder, had led fleets into battle against enemies that would make most species faint with fear. Right now, he looked terrified. The humans are new, said. Their database integration is incomplete. The warnings about war space have not yet been translated into their systems. The warnings are in 14,000 languages, said Elder Moss of the collective. There were plant-like beings, ancient and wise, who spoke in slow, careful words. How could they miss all of them? The beacon wavelengths were set for established conquered species, another representative explained. Human sensors use different frequencies. They may not have detected the warnings at all. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what this meant. The forbidden zone was forbidden for a reason. 12,000 years ago, a species called the Architects had built weapons so powerful that they nearly destroyed the entire galaxy. The war against them had lasted for centuries and killed trillions of beings across thousands of worlds. When the Architects were finally defeated, the 7 founding species had made a decision. They would seal away the Architects' territory forever. No one would enter. No one would touch what remained. The war machines that survived would be left to drift in the darkness, slowly dying until they were nothing but dust. But the machines had not died. They had waited, and now a ship full of curious humans was flying straight toward them. We must retrieve the humans, said. Send a fast ship. Pull them out before they reach the inner zones. We cannot enter war space, replied. The treaty forbids it, even for rescue. Then we contact them, tell them to turn around. Their communication systems may not receive our signals, and even if they do, what do we tell them? The full history of the Architects is classified at the highest level. We cannot simply explain why they must leave. The argument continued for hours. Some wanted to send a rescue fleet, treaty or not. Others wanted to destroy the human ship from a distance, preventing any contact with the Architect technology. A few suggested waiting and hopping the humans would pass through without triggering anything. In the end, they chose a compromise. A message would be sent to the human ship, ordering them to turn back immediately. A fleet would wait at the edge of war space, ready to assist if needed but not entering unless absolutely necessary. And everyone would pray to whatever gods they believed in that the humans would listen. Captain received the message 3 days later. It came from High Admiral himself, which surprised her. She had never heard of an admiral contacting a simple cargo ship. The message was short and strange. Human vessel, you have entered restricted space. Turn back immediately. Do not touch anything, do not speak, do not think loudly. Read the message twice. Do not think loudly. What did that even mean? She tried to send a reply asking for clarification, but the response was just a repeat of the same warning. Turn back. Do not touch. Do not speak. Do not think. By then, the Meridian's hope was deep inside the forbidden zone. Turning back would take weeks, and sensors were showing something ahead that made her forget about strange warnings entirely. There were structures in the darkness, massive geometric shapes, each one bigger than anything humans had ever built. They floated in perfect formation, covered in symbols that glowed with faint light. Crew gathered on the bridge, staring at the screen in silence. What are they? Park whispered. Shook her head, she did not know, but she was going to find out. The Meridian's hope flew deeper into the graveyard of the Architects, surrounded by weapons that could destroy stars, guided only by human curiosity and a complete ignorance of what they had stumbled into. Behind them, the conquered fleet waited at the edge of forbidden space and watched with growing horror as the tiny blue dot continued forward into the dark. The structures grew larger as the Meridian's hope traveled deeper into the forbidden zone. Captain had ordered the ship to slow down, moving carefully between the massive shapes that drifted in the darkness. Each one was covered in the same strange symbols, glowing with a soft purple light that made eyes water if she looked at them too long. I don't understand these readings, said Doctor, the ship's physicist. He was a quiet man, usually confident in his work, but now he stared at his instruments with confusion and growing fear. These structures are generating energy, but I can't identify the source. It's not fusion, not antimatter, not anything I recognize." "They're still active?" asked. "They shouldn't be. The materials alone suggest they're at least 10,000 years old, maybe older. Nothing should stay powered that long without maintenance." Shook his head slowly. "Captain, I don't think our physics applies here." Felt a chill run down her spine. She had read about advanced alien technology during her training. The conquered species were all more advanced than humanity, some by thousands of years. But they still used fusion reactors and antimatter drives, still followed the same basic laws of physics that human scientists understood. Whatever built these structures had moved beyond those laws entirely. "Captain," said Lieutenant Park from the navigation station. His voice was strange, distant. "I'm seeing patterns in the formations, mathematical patterns, like they're arranged in a code." Walked to his station. Park's hands were shaking as he pointed at his screen. He had mapped the positions of the structures, and they did form a pattern. Spirals within spirals, fractals repeating at different scales, all of it organized with perfect precision. "It's beautiful," Park whispered, "and terrible, like looking at something that wasn't meant for human eyes." Understood what he meant. The pattern was mathematically perfect, but something about it felt wrong. It pressed against her mind in ways she couldn't describe. She forced herself to look away. "Keep us moving," she ordered. "Find a path through to the other side." In his quarters, Chief Engineer Cole was having a different experience. He had left the bridge an hour ago, overwhelmed by the strange feelings that the structures created. Now he sat on his bed, holding a harmonica that his grandmother had given him when he was a child. Was not like the other crew members. Before joining the Space Corps, he had been a musician. He had played in bars and concert halls across Earth, making his living with his hands and his ears. He had joined the Corps at 42, looking for adventure, and had discovered a talent for understanding machines. Music and engineering were not so different, he often said. Both were about patterns, rhythms, the way things fit together. Now, as the ship passed through this graveyard of alien technology, could hear something that no one else seemed to notice. The structures were humming, not with their engines or generators, but with something deeper, a vibration that he felt in his bones more than heard with his ears. He raised the harmonica to his lips and played a note, a simple C, clear and pure. The humming outside changed slightly, responding to his sound. Played another note, then another. A simple melody that his grandmother had taught him on her porch in Alabama, surrounded by fireflies and summer heat. The old song drifted through his quarters, and somehow, impossibly, the structures outside began to match it. On the bridge, Doctor's instruments went crazy. "Captain, the energy readings are changing. Something is responding to music." Stared at the screen. The nearest structure, a massive pyramid that could have swallowed Earth's moon, was pulsing with new light. The symbols on its surface were moving, rearranging themselves into new patterns. "Where is Chief Engineer Cole?" she demanded. "His quarters," someone answered. "Ran." She found sitting peacefully on his bed, playing his harmonica while the most powerful weapons in galactic history danced to his tune. The walls of his quarters were displaying images that hadn't been there before, shapes and colors that shouldn't exist, scenes from a world that had died 12,000 years ago. Cole shouted, "What are you doing?" Lowered the harmonica and smiled. It was a calm smile, completely at peace. "They were lonely, Captain. They've been waiting here for so long, and everyone who came before was afraid of them. They just wanted someone to talk to." "They, who are they?" As if in answer, a voice filled the room. It was not sound exactly, but something that registered directly in his mind. It was old, ancient beyond comprehension, and filled with a sadness that made her want to weep. "We are the last of our kind," the voice said. "We are the architects." Across the galaxy, in the conquered council chambers, alarms were screaming. The sensors monitoring war space showed something that had not happened in 12,000 years. The architect weapons platforms were waking up. All of them. Thousands of structures, each one capable of destroying entire solar systems, were powering up for the first time since the end of the Silence War. High Admiral stared at the screen with an expression of pure terror. The humans have killed us all. But was watching different readings and something didn't make sense. Wait, the Dominion said. The weapons systems are not activating. The power signatures are different. Different how? I don't know, but if they were preparing to attack, we would already be dead. Studied the data carefully. Something else is happening, something we have never seen before. On the Meridian's Hope, Captain was receiving an education in galactic history that no human had ever heard before. The voice in her mind, the voice of the architects, was telling her their story. We did not want war, the voice explained. We wanted to share our knowledge to lift other species to our level, but they feared us. They saw our power and called us monsters. They attacked us first, destroyed our worlds, killed our children. We fought back because we had no choice. Listened, unable to look away from the images floating in quarters. She saw beautiful cities burning. She saw desperate battles in the darkness of space. She saw a species driven to extinction while the rest of the galaxy celebrated. In the end, we had one choice left. We could destroy everything, end all life in the galaxy as revenge for what had been done to us. Or we could wait. We uploaded our minds into our machines and went to sleep, hoping that someday someone would come who was not afraid. And then we came, said softly. Yes, you came playing music, thinking of your grandmother, carrying no weapons and no fear. You are the first in 12,000 years to approach us with kindness instead of hatred. His mind was racing. The Conquered had told humanity so little about galactic history. Now she understood why. The great alliance that welcomed humanity into space had built itself on a genocide. They had destroyed an entire species and buried the truth so deep that no one remembered the real story. What do you want? She asked the voice. We want to come home. We want to share what we know. We have knowledge that could advance your species by millions of years, but we have learned our lesson. We will not force ourselves on anyone again. We will only return if we are welcomed. Why us? Why humanity? The voice was warm now, almost gentle. Because you played music to a weapon of war. Because your engineer thought of his grandmother when facing the unknown. Because you are young and foolish and brave, and you do not yet know enough to be afraid. Raised his harmonica again. Can I play something else for you? Please, the voice said. We have been so quiet for so long. We would like to hear more music. Outside, visible through the ship's windows, the massive structures began to move. They arranged themselves into new patterns, forming shapes that pulsed with light. They were dancing, realized. These weapons that could destroy stars were dancing to the music of a harmonica. She thought about the conquered fleet waiting at the edge of forbidden space. She thought about the lies they had told and the truth they had hidden. She thought about what it would mean if humanity became the bridge between the architects and the rest of the galaxy. Then she sat down next to and started to clap along with his song. The dancing continued through the night, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Conquered Council remained in emergency session for 18 days. High Admiral had stopped sleeping by the third day, sustained only by military stimulants and cold fear. Had lost count of how many times the Council had voted on whether to send the fleet into war space, destroy the human ship from a distance, or simply wait and see what happened next. Each vote ended the same way. The founding species were paralyzed by terror, unable to act, unable to agree, watching helplessly as their ancient nightmare came back to life. Reports kept arriving from the sensor stations at the edge of forbidden space. The architect platforms were not attacking. They were not even moving toward conquered territory. Instead, they were reorganizing themselves, forming new patterns that the Council's best scientists could not interpret. And at the center of it all, the tiny human ship remained intact, its crew apparently healthy, communicating regularly with beings that had nearly destroyed the galaxy. "We must accept the reality," said during one late-night session. "The architects are awake. Nothing we do will change that. The question is what happens next." "What happens next is war," growled. "It has to be. They will want revenge for what we did to them." "If they wanted revenge, we would already be dead. Those platforms could reach our core worlds in days." "Then what do they want?" Had no answer, none of them did. On the Meridian's Hope, Captain was learning the answer to that question. She had spent the past 2 weeks in conversation with the architects, or rather with the digital minds that now lived in the weapon platforms. They told her their history, their science, their art. They explained technologies that made humanity's most advanced ships look like wooden boats. They shared philosophies that stretched the limits of what could understand. But mostly they listened. They wanted to know everything about humanity. How did humans raise their children? What did they eat? What made them laugh? What made them cry? They were fascinated by the smallest details of human life, the things that had always taken for granted. "You are so young," the voice said one evening, while played guitar in the corner and half the crew sat listening. "Your species has existed for barely a moment in cosmic time. You have not yet learned to hate properly. You have not yet built the walls that separate you from others." "We have plenty of hate," said honestly. "We have wars and cruelty and all the terrible things that thinking beings do to each other." "Yes, but you also have this," the voice indicated, who was playing a slow song about a home he missed and a daughter he loved. "You have people who create beauty just because they can. You have engineers who think of their grandmothers when facing the unknown. You have soldiers who sit down and clap along with music instead of reaching for weapons." Thought about the conquered, about the great alliance that had welcomed humanity into space. She had always been taught that the founding species were wise and ancient, that humanity should feel grateful to be accepted by them. Now she saw them differently. They were old, yes, but they were also tired. They had fought and killed and conquered for so long that they had forgotten how to do anything else. "What do you want from us?" she asked. "Really?" "We want to return to the galaxy, but not as we were before. We have had 12,000 years to think about our mistakes. We were too proud, too sure of ourselves. We tried to lift other species to our level without asking if they wanted to be lifted. We assumed that our way was the only right way. And now we understand that we need help. We need a species that can speak for us, translate our intentions, show the galaxy that we are not the monsters they remember. We need partners, not subjects." "And you want humans to be those partners?" "Yes, because you played music when everyone else brought weapons. Because you are young enough to see possibilities instead of dangers. Because you remind us of who we were before fear and war changed us into something else." Was quiet for a long time. This was not a decision she could make alone. It was not even a decision that humanity could make alone. But she understood that something important was happening, something that could change everything. "I need to go home," she finally said. "I need to talk to my people, explain what I have learned here." "We understand. Go and take our message with you. We will wait. We have waited 12,000 years. We can wait a little longer." The Meridian's Hope began its journey out of forbidden space. This time, the architect platforms moved aside to let them pass, creating a clear path through the graveyard of ancient weapons. Lights flashed in patterns that might have been farewell, or good luck, or something that human minds were not built to understand. At the edge of war space, the conquered fleet was waiting. Hundreds of warships, armed with the most powerful weapons the galaxy could build, faced the small cargo vessel that emerged from the Forbidden Zone. High Admiral hailed them immediately. "Human vessel, you will stop and prepare to be boarded. You will surrender all records of your contact with the enemy. You will submit to quarantine and examination." Smiled, she had expected this reaction. "Admiral, I respectfully decline. I am carrying a message for Earth's government, and I have no intention of letting you bury the truth again." "You do not have a choice. Your ship is surrounded." "Yes, it is. But you should know that my new friends are watching, all of them, and they have asked me to tell you something." The fleet's sensors suddenly lit up with warnings. Every architect platform in war space had turned to face them. Thousands of weapons platforms, each one capable of destroying entire solar systems, were now pointing at the conquered fleet. "The message," continued, "is that the architects are not your enemies. They never wanted to be. They want to talk, to share, to join the galaxy again. But they will not be attacked, and they will not let you silence their new friends." His face went pale. "You cannot threaten the conquered." "I am not threatening anyone. I am delivering a message. The architects want peace, Admiral. Real peace, not the armed standoff that your people have maintained for 12,000 years. They are offering knowledge, technology, answers to questions that your species cannot even imagine. All they ask in return is a chance to be heard." The Admiral had no response. The weapons of his fleet were toys compared to what the architects could bring to bear. He had no leverage, no power, no choice but to listen. "Let us pass," said. "Let us go home and tell our people what we have found. Then humanity will decide what happens next, not the conquered, not the architects. Humanity." For a long moment nothing happened. Then slowly the conquered fleet began to move aside. The Meridian's hope flew through the gap they created and headed for Earth. 2 months later, Captain stood before the United Earth Assembly. Representatives from every nation on Earth watched as she told her story. The images from war space played on screens around the chamber. The voice of the architects, recorded during their conversations, filled the air with ancient wisdom and impossible knowledge. When she finished, the assembly was silent. Then questions began, thousands of questions and debates that would last for months. Humanity had been given a gift that could change everything, and now they had to decide whether to accept it. In the end, they voted yes. Not because they trusted the architects, and not because they were sure it was the right choice. They voted yes because they were young and foolish and brave, and they did not yet know enough to be afraid. High Admiral wrote a report for the conquered council. It contained only one line, but it would be quoted for centuries. "We spent 12,000 years trying to forget the architects. The humans spent 3 weeks teaching them to dance." The architects began their return to the galaxy, guided by human ambassadors, welcomed by human music, slowly rebuilding trust one small step at a time. It was not easy, and it was not quick. Old fears did not die simply because someone played a harmonica. But for the first time in 12,000 years, there was hope. Captain returned to Earth a hero, though she never felt like one. She had simply done what seemed right at the time. She had listened when others wanted to fight. She had found common ground when everyone else saw only differences. Her daughter was waiting at the spaceport when she landed, held her tight, and thought about all the children across the galaxy who might now grow up in a universe with a little more hope and a little less fear. Cole became Earth's first official musical ambassador to the architects. He spent the rest of his life traveling between worlds, playing songs, building bridges, showing the galaxy that sometimes the smallest things could make the biggest difference. And somewhere in the space between stars, ancient weapons drifted peacefully, their surfaces covered in new patterns that spelled out words in 1,000 languages. "Welcome home,"